morning and welcome to the Point. It is Monday, August 16th, 2021. Thank you to those of you joining us on the GBN Grenada Broadcasting Network's Facebook page, the Grenada Broadcasting Network's YouTube channel, the website www.gbn.gd, GBN TV channel 7, 11 and 20. Good morning to the listeners of Classic 105.5, 105.9 and all the folks joining us on Party Grenada and Go to Fet Facebook pages. This morning joining me virtually is the Public Relations Officer of the Grenada Promoters Association, Eddie Greenidge, and he's here to give us some information on the association as well as to share some of the concerns that the association has, especially as we are in COVIDious times, and some of the things that have been put in place or they were hoping would have been put in place by now so that the industry can get up and running. But before we get into that, let's welcome Mr. Greenidge. Thank you very much, sir, for joining us on To The Point this morning.
Hi, good morning, Blossom, and good morning to everyone listening.
Appreciate it. Before we get into the issues, just share with us some information on the Grenada Promoters Association. It's a relatively young association formed, as you told me, just about 2 years or so ago. So tell me, first of all, what prompted the promoters to come together to bring this association to the fore and some of its objectives.
Right. So, Grenada Promoters Association, as you indicated, was formed just a little over 2 years ago, right? And it became a necessity to form the association because for persons who are not familiar with the promoters, we've had issues from time to time with, whether you want to say regulatory issues, with dealing with the government with regards to taxation, VAT. There were things that was being implemented, and in dealing with the government, actually, they were the one that suggested that they would prefer to deal with an association instead of dealing with, individual promoters.
Right.
Because it would be just more comprehensive in dealing with a body instead of dealing with individuals, And there were some issues getting the association started. There were some teething problems, but to fast forward and make a long story short, we were able to incorporate the association and get it up and running so that when we're speaking on the behalf of issues pertaining to promoters, let me just give you an example. One of the more burning issues that came about because, now COVID is a talking point, but our main issue even before COVID, I don't know if you remember, was it in 2019 when there was a new implementation of value-added tax, right, to events and to carnival costumes and to Monday night mass. These were one of the issues that was a burning issue because it became a bit of a hindrance to us. Because as much as people see value-added tax, and it is a consumer tax, one of the problems we had is that we were the ones that ended up being absorbing a lot of these costs because the ability to pass on that tax to the consumer, it was a difficult proposition. As a promoter, you have to balance between finding that sweet spot, that price point where you don't put the average person out of pocket because you want to cater for everybody. You want to cater for the average man. You want to cater for the upper echelon of society just the same. So you have to get that sweet spot. And we realized that if we were going to just raise or add 15% onto our price point, that could have been cut down on the amount of persons coming out to event, and thereafter basically making your events no longer profitable. So it was a challenge. So that was one of our burning issues back then. Up to now, actually, have still not been resolved totally, because we were in dialogue. But COVID came, and that had to take a back seat for now. But I've said all this to say that these were some of the issues we had as promoters, and even for the betterment of the association and entertainment in general, the government just decided that they prefer to deal with an association. So hence the genesis of why the association came about. And I think we also as promoters we had a lot of plans in the pipeline as to the things that we would like to do. There were things on the cards of doing charity, doing events, for instance, geared towards whether it is we pick a charity of our choosing, and so there would have been that social aspect and that community aspect of what we're doing as well. So this association wasn't just about to speak to the powers that be or to negotiate with government, but it was something that we wanted to have a bigger impact as well in society.
So do you think you were able to accomplish the things that you set out to, even in the short span of time that you've been around, considering, of course, the COVID-19, the effects of the pandemic, some of the things that the association was planning to tackle? Do you think you've had success in those areas?
Well, I would say no, and here's why I would say, because everything is actually hinged on the pandemic. Kind of just came in and just threw everything out of whack, because we had I would say a very ambitious goals in terms of, as I spoke to you previously about the charity, right? And we wanted to look for the overall betterment of the association members. We was going to implement a membership, and we got all the legal aspects of it covered, right? And as you say, sometimes you have to walk and chew gum at the same time. So when there were issues relating to the VAT, for instance, right, and we started to meet with the PS of the Ministry of Finance, and we had our discussions, and we were working on our proposals, and so all when we were working on these things, we were getting ready to do submissions, and then this 2019 came, and next thing you know, the start of 2020, and this pandemic just came, and priorities changed, right? So all the things that we had in place, like the charity, we wanted to do. We were even looking at, for instance, at some point in time where we could get to a place where you can have, if you look at Trinidad and you look at these other bigger countries, we have these shows that or even artists that you wouldn't traditionally see in Grenada, like the big R&B artists. And we would have liked to get to a place where the association had come together, right? And to put on a big event so that people could see these traditional artists that you would not normally see in Grenada, right? And these were things that were on the cards that we would have liked to work towards. We weren't there as yet, but all these things now take a back seat, because ideally, most of the promoters, we have not worked, and I say most guardedly, because I can speak to me personally, since the lockdown, the original lockdown, I have not made a dollar in this industry, right? And I'm sure there are a lot of other promoters out there like me. But the reason I say most of us, because there have been some deviation now, and I don't want to get ahead of myself, and but there are now vaccinated events. There's different matrix to how you can have events now. So there are promoters that are doing events, but in a limited way, But the majority of promoters, I say, we have not made anything in over a year.
So let's get to the issues now. In government saying, we prefer to deal with the Promoters Association, let's come together and discuss issues. But you're saying that there are things that discussions were held, but you have not seen the fruits of those discussions. Can you highlight for me what are some of those things that you were hoping to have had in place following those discussions but are not yet in place?
All right. So let me just give a little background, a history on our path thus far, right? As I said earlier on, COVID came and catch all of us with our pants down, right? And since we were learning and about COVID along the way and trying to see if we can move forward, right? We reached out. Our first option was to reach out to the COVID committee, right? which we had previous meetings, and then we had some discussions with the COVID committee, which didn't bear much fruits because there was and I understand the position of the COVID committee. They were learning along the way as well. Because there was a lot of new information, they were learning the science of it. So, if you remember last year, before December, before there was no events, and then somewhere leading up to December, they allowed people to have limited events. They gave a cap of 200 persons, right? And so we were able to get this in place where we could have events of up to 200 persons. And then I don't know if you remember, there was an issue in one of the nation's hotels where there was a outbreak, and then all that had to be shut down. I don't know if you recall that in December of last year. So that now, let's say, promoters who was going to take that opportunity had to put everything at a halt. So persons who may have invested monies, whether in promotion, advertising, procuring, whatever it is they have to get for that event, as small as the number was, they say, okay, well, maybe it's better than nothing, right? So all that basically went down the drain because we understand a release was put out by the COVID committee asking to put everything on hold. Because although written permission was given to members of the association and individual promoters to do events, we had to put everything on hold because of that outbreak, right? So that's where we started. And then thereafter, when that subsided a bit, we were able to meet with the Minister of Culture, we met with the Minister of Health, and thereafter we were able to secure a meeting with the Prime Minister. We did our own groundwork and things. We had our proposals as to what we think might be the best way moving forward with regards to how events could coexist in this new dispensation, right? So we did our groundwork. We did, whether it was schematics, what a traditional event should look like. We looked at venues, venue capacities, and percentages as to how we can cut back on these. Because we recognize that there's no way we could continue the status quo. We couldn't continue to have events like events that was before COVID, like having events with how much thousands of people. It was just risky. So we said, okay, let us base moving forward based on size of venue and capacity, and we can work on percentages based on the type of event, because types of events will present different risks. So let me just give you an example. If you do an event, let's say a calypso show, that is a sit-down show, right? It presents a different level of risk to that of a traditional party, like a club party where you're going and everybody just holding on and jam, wine and jam, because that is just a lot of one-on-one contact. Whereas if you have a sit-down event, you can arrange your seating appropriately, you can have entrances set up that you have one way in, one way out, all these things. So it presented a different level of risk. So we took all that into consideration when dealing with this, with moving forward. So we put that as part of our proposal. We got a list of venues around the country that we know as traditional venues, whether it was Quarantine Point, the stadium, all these different venues. And we got data to show, okay, this is what the venue capacities are, and this is what we suggested that we drop these numbers down to based on the event type, right? We also look at all the protocols with regards to the advice from the experts, like the medical experts, like the washing of hands, the wearing of masks, hand sanitizing, all of those protocols we had put into our proposal as well, because we wanted to be a responsible association. And we put that did all this groundwork, and we had all this in our presentation. And when we were able to secure that meeting with the Prime Minister, we furnished him with a copy of that, so before a meeting he could familiarize himself with a lot of things that we were suggesting, so we could have a fruitful meeting. And I must say it was a meeting that I walked away from very optimistic. It was a good meeting, you know. And when we spoke to the Prime Minister, he reached out to us and he said well, in a matter of speaking, he feel our pain, you understand? And he asked that we do this in such a way that that a proposal can go to cabinet as a cabinet submission. So we, even at that point, thought, let's put some more meat on the bones. And we did a little bit more work. We provided layouts and so, because one of the things that we wanted to do is that we didn't just want to go out on our own and just do something or just do events. We wanted to work in collaboration with the authorities. In a matter of putting, we were saying, let us do a pilot project, right, of what an event moving forward should look like. Let us do it together. Let us both be comfortable that this could work for us, the promoters, so it would be profitable, and let us be able to work with you, the authorities, so that you would be satisfied that it would be a safe and the public would be safe. So we were looking at the overall good of the public and the good and so that we could feed our families, as we put it. We were looking at lives and livelihoods, you know. So we did all of that. We had put these things in place. We did our submission, and after we did that submission, then we were asked to have a Zoom meeting with Dr. Braffett, Board Braffett, I think. I don't want to misspeak here, and I can't remember what his position is on the COVID committee, but
he's the chairman.
He's a chairman, right? Yeah. And we had this Zoom meeting with him, which our understanding was to go through a process of elimination. And maybe we misunderstood, but that is what we thought. And it was based on what we presented. And from that meeting, we walked away from it. Must be honest, being very disappointed because we came away from that meeting, first of all, after we did a lot of work. We were asked to present again after we had furnished the information long ahead of time. So it comes as though it's either the data that we provided, either it wasn't reviewed, read, or whatever the case may be. So we had to go through a whole other presentation, you know, explaining what it is that we want to do. And then we were told in that presentation that the weights that some of the things like the hand sanitizing and the wearing of masks, we don't think that it had as much weight as they thought, you know, which was really surprising to us because that is what they have been advocated for throughout the whole pandemic, you know, hygiene, washing of hands, you know, hand sanitizing, wearing your mask, you know. But now that we put it into our proposal as one of the measures, when you come to an event, it's as though it no longer had weight, you know. And then thereafter, we were told that, okay, well, they were going to get back to us. And then we've been playing this waiting game so much so that we have come to the conclusion that it's no longer a waiting game. It is just, I think, and this is me giving my personal opinion here, right? But I don't want to speak to anybody because in the absence of communication, any formal communication saying, well, Grenada Promoters Association, this is our position. We disagree with this or we disagree with that, but we can work with you on this. In the absence of giving us that kind of feedback, right? We just left in the doldrums not knowing where we go from here. You understand? And even when we try reaching out through phone calls, you know, it became as though we, you know, I don't know where else to put it, as though we were just frustrating. I even and all feel sorry for the person that was the point person because I know the person as, you know, he's been saying, boy, you know, I can't report what I don't have. I can't give you information what I don't have, you know. And it just fell by the wayside. Nobody communicated with us from since then, you know. So we moved from a proposal going to cabinet to not getting any feedback whatsoever, right? And we are here now where okay, there were pronouncements made, and then okay, we could have vaccinated events. There was anything formal. We picking up information, maybe whether it's from post-cabinet briefings or whatever the case may be. And I just think that, and I don't understand how maybe government works, but I just don't think that it was proper the way this was rolled out. I don't think it is proper the way they're treating the association, because the government was one of the biggest advocates for the association, and now it's like we're dealing with individuals, right? And I always try to make it clear that I have no problems with any individual, any fellow promoter that decides to reach out, because everybody's reality is different, and sometimes people may, through frustration, might reach out and to the powers that be and say, "Well, I really need to do something because A or B is the case," right? But I just think they should really reach out to the association, and so at least we can move forward, because we even had things with regards to the best way moving forward with regards to vaccination, how we thought it would have been, be able to reach out to more people and to be a more efficient process. So, I've been talking for a long time, Blossom, so let me get to you.
So you're saying that following the meeting, meetings, you haven't had a definitive solution or answer or way forward in terms of getting the association back to, or getting the entertainment business back up and running, as to how we can move forward? That's what you're saying?
Well, yes, and you see, I'm guarded the way I answer this, because
I have a follow-up question.
Anybody looking can see that entertainment is taking place in Grenada. Right. I must say, though, that the way entertainment is taking place in Grenada is not the traditional way we have known entertainment, like how you have events at the stadium, and these venues like the quarantine points, it's no longer like that. A lot of the entertainment that is taking place now is people who own. If you own a venue right now, then you stand a better chance of being able to do something. As limited as it may be, right? You stand a better chance to be able to do something. So if, as a promoter, which the vast majority of promoters are not venue owners, right, then it's difficult, because then you have to go through the process of sending in an application for your event and wait for the COVID committee to respond and give you whatever your numbers, allocate numbers as to how many persons they would allow you to have in your event, right? So that's the average promoter no longer have, as I say, the whole landscape of promotions in Grenada since COVID has changed. I don't want to call out any venue names, whatever it is, but I think we look on social media, we see what's been happening. We see the venues and the places where events have been happening. Other than that, is people doing their little things here and there, but it has changed in a big way.
So how are some events happening, and there are still promoters who are unsure of how they can proceed? I'm asking because if it doesn't seem to balance out.
Well, exactly the point, because part of the objective of when we did our proposal is that so that we could have a blueprint and a working manual as to how to treat with entertainment and how to treat with promotions, right? Because this is, and I use the word entertainment because it's not just about promoters. This is a trickle-down effect, right? When promoters put on events, artists able to get work, they're able to feed their families too, right? Vendors, clothing stores, all these places are direct beneficiaries of promotions and events, right? So when we put on events that we able to have that trickle-down effect for the average man here there to be able to make $1. And what we find moving forward is that in trying to get to that blueprint, we have moved away from that because, as I said, there's no clear direction as to what is expected of us. I don't know if there's, and I must say, right, and I'll take this opportunity to ask directly, can we be furnished, right, with what the policy is? Because instead of getting information through a post-cabinet briefing and say, okay, whether it's 60 persons, I'm seeing information that there's 60 persons are allowed to have if it's not a non-vaccinated event. But I just think it's more useful if we have something, a manual, right? So that as the association, we can now pass that on to the full membership, right? So we don't have John, Jane, whoever it is trying to figure out, so what exactly I have to do, right? How much person? There should be no ambiguity as to what the protocol is, right? And it seems to be not clear. And that is why I continue to advocate that we go back to dealing with this from an institutional standpoint, from an association standpoint, government to the association, so that we can filter down the information to our members. Because we there's a lot of blank spaces. We're not sure what is expected of us, right? We're not sure how to move forward. Promotion is something that is an investment. It's one of the most riskiest business to get into. It's not like something that, once you start spending money in an event, right? From the day you call a graphic designer and say, do a poster for me, this is the event, this is the theme of event, this is the price, this is whatever it is, and you start spending money already. You're paying this man to create this artwork for you. And then we got some you in the radio, we send it to you to do ads, we call somebody to voice the ad. All this is money that you have to spend up front, even way before the event comes along. So promotion is not it's a unique type of business that you have to understand the business when you're making policy and understand how it is that it works. Too often things are done and people that guides the process, maybe they don't understand how it works, and they make policy ignorant of certain facts, So I just wanted to,
And how does since the vaccines came on board, part of government's plan indicate that any event going forward needs to advertise as patrons need to be fully vaccinated. How does that regulation play into what the association was hoping they would be able to accomplish going forward for the rest of 2021 into 2022? And do you see that as the way forward in terms of profitability, attendance, and support from the people who support these events?
Yeah. Well, let me start by saying, right, with regards to vaccination, this was something that we addressed in a meeting that we had at the National Stadium. And it was something that I must say that it wasn't... We represent everybody, and everybody is entitled to their own opinion, and you cannot fault a man for having his opinion when it comes to vaccination. So we never tried to take a position on vaccination as to whether we were for or whether we were against, right? However, we did indicate that we were willing to work with the powers that be to assist in the education process with regards to vaccination. And I say the education process because when we look at what was being done at the time, because remember I'm speaking to you, from about months ago, right? When we looked at what was taking place, most of the sensitization that was happening in regards to vaccination, or whether you want to call them local celebrities or recognizable faces being used to advance the vaccination, take a vaccine, And we thought, okay, it would have been better. Maybe better is not though, but it would have been useful to have another approach as well. Right, because not we have our health practitioners, whether it's doctors, nurses, and I'm not talking doctors in the context here because we have experts at the COVID level that might be saying, yes, this is the way to go. But people need to have the confidence that when they go to take a vaccine, that this is something that they have no doubt about. So people, I think, would prefer to hear it from their private doctors, nurses, people that they have the confidence in. So we thought, for instance, it would be a good idea to put on something like a social event, whether, like how you have health fairs, but do it in a social setting whereby you can invite doctors, nurses in a nice entertainment setting, using that as a platform to answer questions that the average man or woman have about vaccination, right? And whether you was going to go as far as to do vaccination at the event or make sure it was geared towards answering those concerns. Because when we were speaking to our membership or just speaking to people in general in society, people have concerns and people and still have this let's wait and see attitude about vaccination, right? So we thought that might have been a good way forward, right, with regards to vaccination. But we never had any resistance with regards to it. We were willing to work with the powers that be with regards to vaccination, in that to help to move forward and to advance, because as I say, we have to work together, right? In terms of its moving forward, I think we have to have a more open-minded approach when it comes to this. I am willing to say with 100% certainty that everybody will never take this vaccine, right? And knowing this, even if you have targets that you want to meet, whether it's 60% of the population, whatever, I'm not sure on what the percentages are, right? Whatever your targets are, you have to have a plan B, you have to have a plan C. And that's why we say we have to have a working manual because, right? And we're just looking at this from a COVID point of view. COVID is not going to be the last pandemic that raises its ugly head in this world, right? And that is our logic in being open-minded in the approach and even coming up with a plan moving forward. Because entertainment can't always be that casualty of war. We can't always be the one that have to sit down and can't be able to feed our families, right? So that is why we think that it's important that we put some and be more open-minded in the approach, right? Do a blueprint as to what, okay, we have a pandemic, this is how we effectively move forward, this is how we work in the presence of a pandemic, right? So even with the profitability, right, with the vaccinated events, because you did ask that question about profitability, it's not sustainable, and it is, and I don't want to be condescending in any way. Anybody who thinks that you can move forward just doing vaccinated events, I just don't think they thought it through very well. Because if you've been paying attention to the vaccinated events, because the mere fact that you have a smaller pool of people to pull from, right? Your potential customer base is so much smaller, right? Out of we are a population of 100 to 110,000 people. Out of that 110,000 people in Grenada, right? I would tell you that on any given weekend, outside of a pandemic, normal entertainment, all promoters is going after, on a weekend basis, 3,000, 3,500 people, right? I talking people that consume entertainment, and I'm talking going out in the everyday kind of, whether it's a fete or whatever the case may be, 3,000, 3,500 people. Maybe if it's a show in the stadium with some big artists, you may be able to push the envelope and say, okay, maybe between 4,000-5,000 people. In Carnival, because you have such a large influx of people, you're talking 10,000 plus people, right? But I'm saying this to say that it is just not sustainable us moving forward in now trying to, all of us, all promoters going after. Remember how much people is vaccinated now? Whether it's, I think it's fully vaccinated. It's somewhere in the teens.
About, yeah, 19,000. Yeah.
That's fully.
Thereabout, yeah.
19,000. Out of that 19,000, you know, there would be a percentage of that do not consume entertainment. And from my observation, I can't say this is scientific in any way. The vast majority of people that have been vaccinated are not the big consumers of entertainment. Is the mature, people that just decide, let me go and get my vaccination early, and the younger people is not driven to go and get vaccinated, and these are the biggest consumers of entertainment, right? And so the percentage and the pool that we pull in from is so much smaller, right? If you realize the price points of events now would skyrocket, because now the overheads to do an event it has not changed. Right? If you need sound, you have to get sound, you have to get music, you may have to get stage, you may have to get lighting. All these things still remain, right? As part of the infrastructure of doing an event, right? So that have not changed, but you're still trying to put on an event. So now what is happening that the price now would have to rise significantly. So an event that you could have done before, right? And say, okay, is $60 for event. No promoters would have to get creative and say, watch, this isn't making sense, we have to do all-inclusive. And I think you may see more and more people trying to do all-inclusive events, because now they're trying to get the consumer to pay ahead of time, right? Because a large portion of promotion is unknown. We put out a product, we market that product, and we hope that is attractive enough for you to come to our event. Imagine you put on an event, you do all this advertisement, all this promotion, and 90% of the time as a promoter, you don't know how much people going to show up on the night. Your ticket, if you have free ticket sales, for event, a lot of events don't have free ticket sales, but if you have free, it might be an indicator, right? Now, you're trying to be able to cover your base, cover your bottom line more so now. Because if, let's say, for instance, you have an event that is 60 persons, it is 60 persons, that's nobody. And you have to say 60 persons taken into consideration, you would have to have staff to make sure your event runs smoothly. Yeah? So it's a difficult proposition. To me, it's not sustainable. So that is why we have to come up with a proper blueprint as to protocols. We have, do a layout, how a typical event should be, entrances, and we suggested some of these things so that we have one way in, one way out, no crisscrossing of patrons and aisles, We did a general layout of how an event should be so that you don't have all this physical contact. One of the things that we had put in our proposal that I forgot to mention to you is that a lot of times we don't recognize that when we go out in parties, we really and truly party in groups. I don't know, Blossom, I sure you go out and party, Eddie, and it's you, whether it's your significant other, and your girlfriend, right, and her significant other. So you might go to a group of 4, 5, 10. We have different sizes of groups, because some people are big groups, some people are small, So we were saying, why not use that? It's only because when we go to a stadium or we go to in any kind of venue, because everybody's packed tightly together, we don't see those groups, but these groups exist, right? So what we're saying is that let us use the way we already socialize. Let's use the way we already party, right? And to create a blueprint. So all we have to do now is to segment these groups, right? So if you, Blossom, have a group of 10 persons, and these are people that is already in your social space, that you are accustomed socializing with every day, right? Then you can now go into us in an event setting now and be able to interact with these same persons, right? You're not worried about no mass, because, when you leave that area, right? When you leave your area, then you make sure you have your mask on, you do all the other protocols and so. And I'm just using this as an example. This is not an absolute. I'm not saying that is the only way, right? But I'm just using this to say we have to be more open-minded in our approach, because if we don't do that, we're going to be, we proceed as though another pandemic can show up on top of COVID. We could be thrown another curveball. Or right after we get over COVID, something else could just pop up. So we have to be more open-minded. We have to be more ambitious in the way we proceed and the way we look at the way we want to do business, the way we want to protect our members of society and the community. I know there is this, and because we've sat in the meetings and I know what some of the pushbacks is going to be. And let me just, before, I know maybe this is a question you may have, something that was brought to us over and over when we put our proposals forward is that, yes, you want to do events, yes, you want to be able to cater for people in the venue and to protect them. But what if somebody comes from a neighboring island, right, and comes through the border and undetected, and they have COVID and they end up in one of the events? It causes community spread. Yes, that is a possibility. There's a lot of possibilities in this world, right? But I like to deal with data, right? I don't know if there's any data to show that in anybody that came through this border or borders, how many of them was infected with COVID, right? And yes, you cannot wait for one person to come in and be infected with COVID to put a policy in place. But we have to understand that we cannot fashion our entire policy based on one probability. We can, to me, it's just not sensible, right? And I just think that maybe we need to make some more investment into border security. I'm not an expert on this issue, but I'm just saying a lot of money has been spent on different things. If it is such, if you deem it such an important issue or such a important or a critical area, right, to our security, then put money on, back it up with some financial support. Whether it is that we could drive around Grenada in a vehicle, right, under 2 hours. Whether we have to buy 2 more in those smaller crafts, instead of having 4, we have 5, we have 6, or whatever the case may be, and we do surveillance along our coastlines. Grenada is not a big island, so, and I think our communities put things in place, right? Put resources towards that, whether we have to have some, So I'm just saying, if it is that is something that is that important, let us put some, allocate, resources towards protecting these coastlines. If you think is something that is so important, let's put resources towards it, right? I don't want to speak to policing and how we go about policing, because sometimes I walk through town. I haven't seen it in recent time, but I walk through town and I see people getting charged for not wearing a mask. You understand? And I ask myself as a person and as a private citizen, is that the best way to utilize our resources? I just don't think, especially in people's hardest times and most difficult time, to me, I don't know. I think something is wrong with that,
Let's take a break, Mr. Greenidge, and then we're going to come back and see how many questions we can field from members of the public. This is To The Point on Classic and GBN. We'll be right back.
Hubbard's big promotion is back. Live free for 1 year. Spend $50 or more in any Hubbard's department and receive a chance.
The Country Cold Store wishes to advise the general public and its customers that the company will be closed on Tuesday, August 17th at 12 p.m. to facilitate an important general staff meeting. The wholesale office and mini-mart will resume operations at 8 a.m. on Wednesday, August 18th. Island-wide sales via the trucks and vans will also resume as per normal on Wednesday, August 18th. The Country Cold Store apologizes for any inconvenience that this temporary closure may cause and thank the general public and all its customers for their cooperation and understanding.
Remember, if you have flu symptoms, do the right thing and stay at home to avoid giving it to others. Remember, you can be infectious up to a week after developing symptoms, so rest up and take it easy.
Looking for that.
Welcome back to The Point. We're speaking with Public Relations Officer of the Grenada Promoters Association, Eddie Greenidge. Let me see how many questions I can field from members of the public in the next 5 minutes. You'll be short with your questions and he'll be short with his answers. The landline number, 435-2041. The WhatsApp number is also 435-2041. Please, only written messages on WhatsApp, and you can continue to post your comments and questions on Facebook and YouTube. Good morning, caller.
Good morning, Blossom.
Morning.
I thought that you were so nice. You're so cool. You're so... he said what he had to say, and this is one thing I want Grenadians to do. Say what you have to say, Dreddy, and don't think about repercussions. Say what you have to say. No, Eddie said what he had to say, and I recognize him for that.
Okay, thank you. All right, let me see. There's a WhatsApp question. I'm going to fly through them as much as I can. Somebody says or asks, did Eddie actually apply for an event and was turned down, and what was the reason given? Because I'm seeing all kinds of flyers with events. So did you apply for an event and were you turned down?
In more recent time, no, but previously, yes.
Previous as in during COVID lockdown?
Yes, and I have been turned down on more than one occasion. As a matter of fact, there was an event that I was going to do with an existing establishment, one of the hotels, right? And the application went through the hotel, right? And anyways, for 150 persons, and that was turned down. That was the last event, and I just,
they call it off. A question on Facebook: do you think hoteliers and some restaurants are being treated differently from our local promoters?
Well, I really can't say with any certainty how the hoteliers are being treated, right? Because I'm not in the industry. The little interaction I had with one of the hotel establishments, as I said, we were planning to do an event together, and they tried to get an application in, and they followed up, and they were turned down just the same. In terms of, I don't know if they're just speaking about events or in terms of resources, I don't know, because I can tell you with 100% certainty that in terms of promotions, we haven't had any resources coming our way, right? Whether it's monetarily or support, in no way, shape, or form, we haven't had any support, right? I can't speak to moving forward, but so far, in all the stimulus packages that was sent out, we haven't had any support.
Good morning, caller.
Person, good morning. Now I've been listening to your guest, and I think quite frankly, I tell you, I mean, you are just wasting time, Mr. Gentleman. Number one, we have to look from the point of view that the step the government took in order to prevent the spread of coronavirus in the island. We have to compliment the government for that. Every other event that we have in the Caribbean, you had cricket, you had football, they made sure in order to prevent the spread of COVID that the people performing football, cricket, they're all by themselves. You had no spectators. If at all you had was a very little 2-3. So I can't understand the point that he's trying to make you but of course he tried to do something with the hotel and some other places, and they were turned down. Haven't he learned his lesson? I still cannot understand, because I think that this was a waste of precious time. Thank you.
Thank you. Sir Greenidge?
Am I supposed to respond to that?
Up to you if you'd like to. No? I could move on.
Well, I'm not sure if there was a question somewhere in there, Blossom, but I don't know. As the old saying goes, who feels it knows it, right? And maybe the caller don't know what it is to put on an event, and maybe he gets his salary or whatever it is, his business is not affected, so he's in a position to say such, right? I have no problem with the government protecting the Grenadians. Of course, that's their job, right? But all I'm saying is that we have to be more open-minded in our approach, okay?
A WhatsApp question. How many promoters comprise the association? Is the association a registered business? And when an event is held, how is the profits disbursed?
Okay, so maybe there might be a bit of a misunderstanding. There's no profits to be disbursed when an event happens. The association don't put on events, right? The association is there to advance causes for promoters. Individual promoters put on events, right? And in terms of the number of the association members, the last time I can't give you an exact, but it was somewhere in the maybe over 200 persons. We were just in the process of getting all the final registrations in place and to populate our membership list before all this COVID came into place. But if I would take a cue from our meetings, because all the promoters, the everyday promoters that you know that have put on events, whether it's the Wagiti, the Judas, whoever it is, they attend our when we have our meetings, they all are part of the association.
A Facebook question. Are artists to be fully vaccinated when the fully vaccinated shows are being held? Yes?
Well, from my understanding, and as I say, the policy is not clear, but what I can say is that I spoke to one of the managements from one of our local artists. And what I know is that a lot of our artists have now gone out there to make money, right? Because not much is happening in Grenada. And so far, it is not a requirement in the U.S. for artists to be vaccinated. Once they take a PCR test, and so then they cannot perform. There are some cases where artists have to be vaccinated. It depends on the event, right? So I could say I can't speak to Grenada. I would think that because they say it's only vaccinated events, so I would think they have to. I can't say with any 100% certainty because, as I say, I have no clear directive, anything in writing from the authorities as to what exactly it's supposed to be.
Let me see if I can squeeze in this caller. Good morning, caller.
Morning, Blossom, and morning to your guest. I didn't hear the whole program, but there's one thing he said, and I totally agree with him, is that you shouldn't just have one plan, you should have plan B. And how you have plan B is by having real conversation with everybody that is affected. No, I'm not a promotion. I mean, I don't have affinity to promotion. But I think because we are all in the same boat, we should have conversations that help one another to understand how we are being affected, not doing favors for this one side and that one. You know, unfortunately, we should be trying to help people to be unified in this time, but we are dividing them. In fact, if we had a progressive government, maybe they could have been employing the promoters to help in the education process, not just vaccine, I'm saying, but even in dealing with vaccine or the whole ambit of the conversation. So at least those people wouldn't be feel too deprived. There are other people who have been deprived, the market vendors. There are some market vendors who have died. Nobody looking at that. I mean, there's just so much thing that is not right in this space. And I agree with him. If we do things properly, if we do government properly, governance and all that, a lot of those things that is different groups are experiencing now could have been avoided. And let me say, the worst in finishing, and I agree with him, some more pandemic coming up. What if, as is proven in Trinidad and other places, that the fact that the vaccine people are causing more problems to the unvaccinated, and there are figures to show that. So I will stop here, because I could go on. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much. Mr. Greenidge?
Well, I guess it was just a comment, right? I didn't think I heard a question there.
Okay. All right. As we prepare to close, final thoughts. What's next for the association? Maybe trying to get another meeting, or the association plans its own way forward? What happens next?
Yeah. Well, I must say, I feel as though we're between a rock and a hard place, and it's not a nice place to be. And if any of the authorities listening to this, all I'm saying to you is that let us reopen lines of communication. Let us know what you expect of us moving forward, so that we can filter down that information to our membership, because to me that's the only way forward, right? In terms of what's next for the association, we can only try to look for betterment for our members. It's a difficult proposition right now because we're operating in a pandemic. The association has not gotten to the stage where we can offer support to our membership, So we are in an infancy stage of the association. So there's not much that we can do, right? But a lot of our members are hurting, right? And sometimes, and I don't want to sound as though but it comes off. I don't want to say that the persons don't care, but it comes off as though that there's not enough care in the persons making policy. And I say that because why is it that we seem to be, I can't even say afterthought, because they're not even communicating with us now, right? And a lot of people sit from a position where they can make pronouncements or say things. Maybe they don't feel the pain, they don't know what it is to be in this industry, but they have the job to make the policy, right? They are able to get a salary on cue every other month. They could feed their families. Sometimes some people are not even affected in any way, because that is really not entertainment is not the cup of tea. That is not the lifestyle. We have to recognize there are a lot of people that don't go to parties, don't go to shows, and that is, they go to work, they go home. If they do go to parties in some kind of private setting, and that's their lifestyle. And it takes all kinds to make this world thing. But be more caring in your approach, right? And not because you have the responsibility to make that policy and to, just say, okay, this is a policy or lack thereof, and we just left to figure things out, We have families to feed just the same. I have children to go to school. I have 2 kids in school, secondary school, primary school, I think we have a responsibility to look out for all segments of the society. Even as the caller was saying, there's vendors, whoever it is. Everybody might be going through a tough time. A lot of people that might be going through a tough time. I can only speak to promoters and their association because this is the industry I'm in, right? Everybody would have their own champions or their own persons that can better explain the hardship that they're going through. I'm here to speak about the hardship of the promoters and entertainment in general.
Hopefully it can get better from here. Hopefully the authorities are listening, and maybe you can even initiate another meeting. Maybe take when they say when you don't have good food, take in front. So take in front and maybe initiate another meeting for the association, and it can improve from here.
One can only hope. One can only hope. Yeah.
Let's keep our fingers crossed and
everybody
pray that
know how to meet.
It reaps benefits.
Anybody want to get in touch with me, they know how to again. And last one before, I just want to say one last thing. I don't want, because too often we have, Grenada has come to a stage where we just start to brand people, either as conspiracy theories or we always have to put politics into it, because I noticed that even when you're speaking to people every day, because you're in support of this and you say something that is, it doesn't fall in line with what you agree with, all of a sudden you're against this. I just want to make, I'm not against anybody. I'm not against any, and I always say the powers that be or the government, but because that's who we speaking to, that's who's making the policy. Right? And I just want to make this absolutely clear, because there are going to be people that are going to find a way to twist and turn this. I've never, and I can say this with 100% certainty, I've never been an ite in my life, and I would never be an ite. And if you understand what I mean by that,
I catch it. Thank you very much, Mr. Greenidge. Enjoy the rest of your day, and hopefully it gets better for the association and its members. We'll keep in touch.
Yeah.
Enjoy.
Take care.
You too. Public Relations Officer of the Grenada Promoters Association, Mr. Eddie Greenidge. We thank him for being our guest, and thank you, viewers and listeners, for tuning in to The Point today. That's the end of my time. Joseph is up next with Mid-Morning Buzz. I already stole about 4 minutes of his time, so let me make way for him to enter. Enjoy the rest of your Monday, everybody.
At Communal, we are adapting to meet the changing needs of our shareholders and members.